The annual incidence of food poisoning in England and Wales is unknown, and records of confirmed cases of food poisoning are unavailable. Several million people each year suffer from gastrointestinal infections, i.e. diarrhea and vomiting, and many of these will be foodborne illness. Actual numbers of cases of foodborne illness are estimated to be around 900,000. That was in 2005. The Salmonella Graph, which you have in front of you, this is considered by many to be one of the best indicators of food poisoning trends. There are many things other than standards of food safety that attract trends. It is estimated there are 3 times as many cases compared to the number of isolates recorded, and around 90% of isolates are a result of foodborne infection. You can see from the Salmonella graph that there's been quite a sweeping change from 1997 down to 2005. This has been mainly due to the introduction of injecting chickens with antibiotics to prevent salmonella food poisoning. And wherever you see a lion stamp egg, this means that the flocks of chickens, the herds of chickens, have been injected with antibiotics to prevent salmonella infection. There's also been a decrease in the outbreaks of foodborne infections between 1997 and 2005. And here's a graph looking at the reported case of food poisoning in general. Food poisoning for notification purposes is any disease of an infectious or toxic nature, and we'll look at those definitions later on, caused by or thought to be caused by the consumption of food or water. These reports include illness resulting from viruses, where less than 10% are foodborne, and Campylobacter, where more than 70% are estimated to be foodborne. Many of these cases are unconfirmed, however. There is no specimen provided. They include many cases of diarrhea and vomiting, which are not foodborne, especially viral, such as rotavirus and norovirus, but also Campylobacter. And one little statistic to remember, Campylobacter is the biggest cause of diarrhea in the UK today. These statistics, however, should not be used to indicate trends of actual food poisoning, and they should never be used to indicate trends of food safety standards in commercial premises. From the last graph of general food poisoning outbreaks, and the fact that there are many unreported cases of food poisoning, in fact, figures tend to suggest that there are at least between 7.5 million and 10 million cases of food poisoning every year. So they are on the increase, not on the decrease. Why do you think there are so many cases of food poisoning? Again, take a couple of minutes and write down as many ideas you can think of why food poisoning has gone up and not gone down. So how many ideas did you think of? Well, here's a few of mine. Intensive farming of animals, especially with chicken breeding, keeping chickens in close confinement, confining about 14 chickens to a square metre, where they're pecking each other's feces and urine, and obviously spreading disease. Few larger slaughterhouses replacing many smaller ones, so that means more transport of animals over longer distances, which increases stress, makes them more susceptible to disease. Increased foreign travel, higher level of reporting, growing awareness of public, improved laboratory testing and investigation, an increase in imported exotic food, increase in meals eaten out, our lifestyles have changed, growth in convenience foods, more susceptible people, especially elderly and ill, new pathogens coming onto the scene, especially low dose pathogens, and we'll look at these later on, reduced use of preservatives, especially chemical preservatives, increased problems with salad vegetables and fruit, especially where there's polluted irrigation water, manure, lack of hygiene amongst fruit pickers and growers. The Food Standards Agency statistics are used for measuring trends in food poisoning. Food Standards Agencies use laboratory isolates to determine trends in food poisoning: Salmonella, Campylobacter, E. coli 0157, Clostridium perfringens, and Listeria monocytogenes. Up to 20% of cases are from infection acquired abroad. And we mustn't forget the at-risk groups, or the most vulnerable groups in society that are more susceptible to food poisoning than anybody else. There are 4 at-risk groups: the elderly, the very young, ill people or hospital patients, or the people who are immunocompromised, and pregnant women. The elderly are affected because their immune system is not as strong as a healthy adult, and their organs are not as strong as they used to be. The very young because they haven't acquired an immune system yet, and their organs are still quite weak. Ill people, for obvious reasons, they can't fight infection because they're quite weak. Hospital patients, perhaps people are going in for an operation, coming out of operation, so they really are at a low ebb. Immunocompromised, people who can't fight infection, like people with AIDS, for example. And pregnant women, they're affected by the bacteria called Listeria. And with Listeria, it's not so much the pregnant woman that becomes ill, it affects the unborn child. The Listeria bacteria actually embeds itself in the placenta, and it prevents anything, any nutrients, any oxygen from getting to the child, so they could end up with a stillbirth or miscarriage.